هوني واحد جوكا صورة نسيس ناري كذي كانوا سريع يجت كهون نبي يجت تقول نستار أنا طاهوني ده كده وده ده قرون قدر يدرس يكتي صوت أصلا كجراف كنا يكتي نستار يوم جاكي كنا قوي ستار كنا لكن وده ده قوي جني كنا يكتي رجال كنا قوي كنا كسوكي أو كده سوكي ست كسوكي بس سوكي كنا أجيء كسوكي كنا قوي كو أقوى كده لكن ورادو أقوله سوى نوسا سرانو كنا أقوله أقوله لكن ورادو يتصل تكون أن لما تحس بالجانب الديني كتحول أيام في أكتر هتام داوي أرون هتسلم أنا بس أتصل أنا بنوجا تام داوي أرون هتسلم أنا أقوله أنا بور أنا أنا بس أقوله نسأله كنا بدو يهابي تام داوي أرون هتسلم أنا conquer. As far as I know, the peoples of the Great Plains, the Buffalo people call the Buffalo the conquer. And so to bring back the true spirit of the conquer of the Buffalo, that everybody knows in this world to be Buffalo. They can do a Guego Oriani, Bodiani. Uradu Jagusije, Karunirab, Taganawida, Karunirab, Solicida. Taking Uradu, Abuego, So, as usual, we begin by giving our greetings, identifying who we are. Today, we're getting off to a bit of a slow start. Myself, I had a hard time getting to sleep last night because we had such a beautiful evening. We had a beautiful gathering. We had a beautiful evening last night. We had a ceremony in the garden, a going away ceremony for Elizabeth. She's leaving. She's going back over the Great Waters today. So we had a beautiful gathering, everybody in the ceremonial garden in the pole bean teepee, and just to share songs, to share words, to share our thanks with each other, our gratitude for each other. And anyways, it was beautiful. And afterwards, we had watched a video that Elizabeth had made about when she was tanning, taking care of the buffalo hide, which, when you know of the story, is a pretty crazy story. That what Elizabeth had done was apparently there's someone in somewhere in Britain. What town are they in that has these buffaloes?
Where I got it from. It's in Nottingham.
In Nottinghamshire. So it's where Elizabeth is from. Just so happens that the contact that we made with Elizabeth going back, I don't know how long now, a couple of months, or maybe even longer than that, ends up anyways that she comes from Nottinghamshire. And just coincidentally, there happens to be a buffalo farm in Nottinghamshire. And so what she did was she had acquired one of the buffalo hides, and she had started to prepare it when she was still back in her home in Nottinghamshire, and started to prepare it to bring it across the Great Waters to bring it here to Turtle Island. And there's a video that she made, and that video is going to be shared for everybody to see. And when you watch the video, you'll see it's just it's a crazy story. It's a real amazing story. Anyways, last night, as a result of the ceremony that we did in the evening, and everybody watching this video of too many hamburgers. It doesn't. I had Velcro on here, and it was good for years, but now the Velcro barely even sticks.
I can change it.
Okay then.
But I'll have to bring it home because I don't have a dog food here. But maybe we can find someone. I'll do it for you. I'll have Stone to bring it back.
Okay. Anyway,
Here's another
technical
part.
problems.
Hey, there's no ladder.
It's gonna be in the bloopers. Okay. Anyways, as a result of this, another crazy story. We'll say chapter 2 to this crazy story developed last night as to what our intents are, what we're gonna do. Anyways, as a result of this, last night I had a hard time to fall asleep because there was a lot of things going through my mind as to the possibilities, as to what could happen, what we can do, the effects that it can have upon the earth, upon in people's minds. Our Mother Earth, it's not going to come from creation. It's going to come, has to come from within the minds of people. This is where the change has to come. And so we have to consider, all of us, how will we affect this change upon the earth through the minds of the people? And so this was what was going through my mind last night as to how we can do this to affect a larger change upon the body of our Mother Earth. Hey, bud. Anyways, I was thinking about this. I woke up thinking about it. I woke up with the Buffalo song in my head. Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. The song that Christine made. And it just keeps ringing in my ear because I think of a process of how we got here right now about even just talking about the buffaloes. Is that there's a long process here. So just to get to it, I'm going to relate to you a story before we get into the recital. Let me put this on a border. So I'm going to give you a short story as to how we progressed or how we evolved to this point. Anyways, when in 2014, I believe it was, this is when the people, the Quebecois, were marching against the pipelines. They had marched all the way from Gaspésie, they had come to Grassadaghe, and then they had moved right on to Ottawa. Anyways, when there was when they arrived in Ottawa, there was a big gathering there, and we had met a bunch of people. Anyways, there was a guy there who was saying that he was going to be walking across Turtle Island, that he was going to walk across the country. And as soon as I heard this, I said to myself, well, that's what we got to do. It was like as if this is what our paths were guided to. Anyways, it ended up the next summer in 2015 that we had went across the country, and for us the intent was to go to every territory and to bring the message to the people that it was time for our people to leave behind all the false man-made religions, false man-made education, false man-made political systems, social structures, all of those things that were injected into us as a genocidal policy to eradicate the original peoples here of Turtle Island. And so we identified that to do this, that we have to return to our traditional councils, that we must return our mothers back to power, to their natural seat of authority within all our nations so they can manage our people properly once again. This was the message. And again, to do that, we had to return to our traditional councils, to our traditional teachings, to our own medicine, to our political processes, to return the mothers' own council process, their own political process. This is something that is forgotten to the minds of the people now in this world, that the male dominance has beaten down the women so much that the women are just now absorbed into the male process of everything. And so we must return the woman's separate political process so that we can have the natural or the balance between the two powers, where the women are not deciding within a male structure, but the women, in accordance with Guyana Rasadagoa, are deciding within their own structure, their own political process, their own council fire. Anyways, in that journey, we ended up in Mascachis, and we ended up at the Mine family's property. Anyways, we were there for just overnight, supposedly, and we were going to move on in the afternoon the next day. We went into a sweat lodge with them, and in that sweat lodge, we were speaking of things. Anyways, it comes down to that I asked the people who were present, and these are all the Great Plains people, the Buffalo people. I asked them if they still remember their Buffalo songs and if they still remember the Buffalo Riders. And they looked at each other and they didn't know what that was, Buffalo Riders. And the reason why I am able to say that is because, again, when I was a little kid, I grew up under the table of my where the chiefs and the clan mothers were always discussing things. I was always at my chief's house because my mother was his clan mother, the female chief. So I was privy to a bunch of information, any council, any ceremony that ever took place. I was present because my mother had to be. And as a result of this, there used to be, I remember a lot of people that used to come to our chief's house from different nations. They were obviously not our people, I can tell, just the way that they looked, the way that they dressed, the way that they talked. They were different. There was people that came from all over the country to lodge different things within the well of the Ganyangahaga, of the Five Nations Longhouse Confederacy, because it is us that, for some reason, as the foundation of the Five Nations Confederacy and uh, carrying that responsibility of being foundation, apparently other nations have found that as they were disappearing, that the only thing that would keep it alive, their spirit, their songs, their dances, their ceremonies, their legends, their stories, that was to lodge them here within the Ganyangahaga. And so this is what I heard when I was a kid. There was these old men, and now I was around 4 or 5 years old, so it's around 1967, 66, 67. And so I remember these old men who were like probably already in their 70s, 80s. So they come from like around 1890s, 1880s. And of course, their information, their stories obviously comes from around the turn of the century, around the 1800s. Anyways, the story that I remember in particular is that they were telling our chiefs, or my mother, or clan mother, they were telling about these buffalo riders and what they would do. That the buffalo riders, when it came time for the great migration of the great buffalo herds, that the people would sneak up to the buffaloes before they start running, and of course it was only a few select men that can do this. That they would jump on the backs of the buffaloes and they would run with those buffaloes. And if you know how buffaloes travel, that they'll run for weeks on end. They will not stop. As a matter of fact, buffaloes mate running. It's not like anybody else, they're not going to lay down or do whatever or even stay still. They run. On the run, buffaloes mate. So what they would do is jump on the backs of these buffaloes, and as they start running, they would obviously, you can't jump off the buffalo because if you're in the middle of a herd of 60 million buffaloes, you're not going to jump off. You're going to get killed. And you're not going to be able to stop and eat. There's no drive-thrus you're going to be able to stop at. You're not going to be able to stop and get a drink. You're not going to be able to stop and go to the bathroom. So what the conditions were is in the daytime, they're under the burning hot sun. And if you know, like the territories where the buffaloes are, daytime, it's like temperatures, just like if you're in the desert in Arizona or something. Burning hot sun. In the evening time, super cold on the plains. There could be a temperature difference of 40, 50 degrees from day to night. And so anyways, so these men would be riding on the backs of the buffaloes for days, in some capacities, they would continue to through the whole journey. And so you can see that then there would be some men, depending on how long they would last, it would be for days and some for a week or two. Anyways, this is the equivalent of a person being in a sweat, a person being in a cold, in the freezing, being hungry, starving, thirsty. So this in the daytime under the burning hot sun, in the evening under the cover of sky woman. And so these men in that journey would receive the dreams and visions that they would bring back to guide their people, to guide their nations. And so when we related this to the people in the sweat lodge, that there was a couple of young guys, there was older guys, and they all looked at each other. They never heard of this, but when they heard of it, they looked at each other and they said, "Yeah, of course." It was like something that is a natural thing that that they would do. Now, it's not something that that's coming from here, the Ganyangahaga. It is a story that was lodged within the well here of the Ganyangahaga by the people who had seen that these things were disappearing, that these things were being lost to time. And so they wanted to protect it, they wanted to save it, and so again they lodged it here within the well of the Ganyangahaga. And after we related this in the sweat, again they said, yeah, yeah, whatever. They all agreed. And when we came out of the sweat, it was May. It was already like summertime. Mascachis, this is just outside of Edmonton. So it was already pretty much summertime. But when we came out of the sweat, it started snowing. And just within a 5 kilometer radius, there was a snowstorm. There was 2 feet of snow that had fallen, just like in a matter of a couple of hours. Like it was a super freaky storm that came out of nowhere. Anyways, we couldn't move on, so we ended up staying for the whole weekend. And so we shared with them the moon teachings. A bunch of people from their nation came over. We shared the moon teachings, the knowledge of the things that we share. And this is what prompted the Mind family to come down and to join us for the law recital in 2017, 2 years after this walk. But going back to this time when we're at their house over the weekend, there was a lot of things that were talked about, buffaloes and things of this nature, that we had to bring the buffaloes back. Anyways, this family has buffaloes. They have a huge property. They got a fence line from their house where the fence begins. There's a field like 500 feet to the trees, and then another field of 500 feet past these trees. And the buffaloes that they had were way in the back field. Anyways, I had gone outside the day that we're getting ready to leave. It was maybe an hour or so before. I had gone outside, everybody was inside, and I had my drum, and I went to the gate of the buffalo field, and I started beating the drum, and I started singing. And to me, what I was doing is I was communicating with the buffalo, searching for, based on what we had just been talking about, searching for the message of how to bring the buffaloes back. Anyways, I didn't know, but apparently they had come outside, the family, and they were behind me. I didn't know, I didn't see it. Apparently, I think they even may have filmed, that they have filmed this. Stone, if you can contact them and ask them about that, if they did film it. I'm pretty sure they did, if they could send that to us. Anyways, I'm standing there and I'm beating the drum and I'm singing to the buffaloes, and only for a minute or two. And by the time I opened my eyes, the buffaloes had come all the way from the back, far field, and they were right in front of me. And there was a female that was right in front of me, and looking at its big eye, and it was crying. You can see there was tears in its eye, and it was communicating to me. Big deal. I can say this to anybody, and it doesn't really matter what you believe. It's what I experienced, and it communicated to me how to bring the buffaloes back. And so I related this to the Mind family and identified that the buffaloes just showed me how to bring the buffalo back. And it was the female buffalo, the mother buffalo, that had shown me this. And anyways, that it was that we were to find the biggest buffalo head, the male buffalo head, and to grind it down, grind the bone down to powder, and that this is to be spread throughout the land, and the people were to gather together to sing the buffalo song to bring the buffaloes back. Now, this was pretty much it there. Anyways, like we said, 2 years later, the Mine family came here for our annual 5 year recital of the Guyana Nasadagoa, which was just three summers ago now in 2017. Okay, so we jump ahead to last night. In this journey, into a couple of months ago, in this journey, we meet Elizabeth, and without her having to be told or even know anything of our culture, that she automatically knew to do something. That on her side of the world, that she had carved the Oyawata wampum belt into the tree. And for those who know of the formation of the league, that the Gunawida had identified after he had established the great peace here amongst the people, that he was now leaving. He was going across the great waters to bring the message over there. And he had identified that he was going to the woods. He was going to go cover himself in the bark of the trees. And again, that this is what he identified, that if you want to know how I am faring in my job, in my work, that you go to the specific tree and you chop into it. And if it bleeds, you know that he has failed in his mission. Anyways, so what she knew to do was to carve the Oyawanta wampum belt, the symbol of the Five Nations Longhouse Confederacy, the symbol of peace. She had known to carve this into the tree on that side of the world, which, whatever anybody wants to think, doesn't matter to me, but I know what that it is to pull that spirit through. That through it, as he buries himself in the barks of the tree here, which she did not know, that in her carving this into a living tree in her land, that it pulls that spirit out over there, the spirit of the Guyana Rasiragoa, of the Ganawida. Anyways, move ahead when she decides that she's coming here, that she acquires again this buffalo hide, and she starts working on it, tanning it, cleaning it to bring it. Anyways, she did not uh, actually believe that she would be able to get it over here across the great waters because of the craziness today, like with immigration and all that kind of stuff. But she got it here. The buffalo hide is here, and in her mind, what she had said was that her mission was to bring the buffalo home, to bring the buffalo back home. And so she made a video of the process, very good video. Everybody's got to see it. You got to see this video. Anyways, after we watched this video last night, we start talking about things, and it's not about the baseball game or anything like that. We only talk business. And so, in the business that we're talking about, in this whole story, we identify what we are going to do to affect the change in the world. That her mission there to return the buffalo back to where it came from, even though it was a dead buffalo in the hide is not a dead thing. The hide carries the life within it. After a deer could be killed, be dead for 20 years, and you're still going to be utilizing its hide. It's still going to be giving life. It's still going to be protecting you. And so the buffalo hide, even though the buffalo is not running around any longer, it's not in his own skin, that buffalo hide carries that spirit. And so this spirit that she brought back here activated something last night. It released something from this whole story that we're talking about, this whole path that we are all on. What it accumulated into is that we identified now what we are going to do together in accordance with the two-row wampum to cause or to affect restitution. Is that the proper word? Correction. To affect correction into the world. We know what happened. The non-native came here and killed off, imagine, 60 million buffalo. Imagine doing that. I'm going to say right now, let's go out and kill 60 million cats. who's gonna go along with that? Who's gonna agree to that? Let's go kill 60 million birds. Who in their right mind would agree with that? Even if you said, let's go kill 60 million ants, who in their right mind would agree with that? But we know that this was policy of the other side of the world, of the corrupt, male-dominant, warmongering mind of Europe, all of Europe. This is the agenda of the so-called royal families of Europe. To cancel out, since they are male-dominant, they obviously have to cancel out, which is matrilineal. And so to do this, that was one side of the brain coming over to the other to sever the line of communication between the two hemispheres of the brain. Because again, the buffaloes are a communication. They are a great communication. This is not just a communication between people or nations, it is a communication between the hemispheres of our Mother Earth, meaning the hemisphere of the brain, on a level that most people today, everybody cannot understand, cannot comprehend. But anyways, so to heal this process, to correct it. The buffaloes were killed here, and their hides were taken across the great waters, because every hide, the reason why they got, or how they got everybody to agree to killing 60 million buffaloes is that they put a bounty on their head. I forget how much it was. I think it was $10 or $20, something like that. That if you killed a buffalo, you just skinned the hide, you left the buffalo there on the ground to rot. Every other part of the buffalo just rotted, but all they took was the hides because they got money for that. So what people done coming from Europe is they seen that, hey, there's a way to get rich here. Come over here and kill as many buffaloes as you can. This is reveals the insanity in the non-native world of that you can claim to be a good person, and you can be a good person relatively, but the system you are locked into of economics guarantees that you are corrupt. Make sure that you are the most corrupt person on the planet. And of course, the person who acquires the most money is the most corrupted person. And so this is how they got rid of the buffaloes. They bribed people through saying, we will give you $10 or $20 per hide. And when you consider like 150 years ago, 120 years ago, that was a huge sum of money. And so people like Buffalo Bill made, I don't know how much money, but apparently Buffalo Bill was the person who killed the most buffaloes ever. So he made lots of money. And this is where, anyways, as a side note, this is where powwows come from today, from Buffalo Bill. Because Buffalo Bill went around the world telling his story, and he brought his Wild West show. And knowing that just prior to this, that they were killing the native people who would carry out our songs and dances, our ceremonies. So you know that in the Buffalo Bill Wild West show, they allowed natives to sing and dance. Well, what kind of songs were they? What kind of dances were they? These were powwows. This is where powwow comes from. It comes from a white man. It comes from Buffalo Bill. And this is where all the songs and everything that you see today in powwows, it comes from a white man. It comes from out of the destruction of our buffaloes. And so today, people are still participating. Our people are participating in that process. So, get back on track here to correct this process of them coming over here, killing the buffaloes here, taking the hides back across the great waters. To correct this, we have to return those buffalo hides. And so this is part of the process which Elizabeth initiated here. But what we decided last night, or what we talked about, is that to complete this, we must actually take a living buffalo back from across the great waters, which just happens to be where Elizabeth lives. There is a buffalo farm there in Nottinghamshire, that where she got her buffalo hide from. So we talked about, we have to get one of those buffaloes, a female buffalo, and bring it back over here, a living buffalo. And this is when we identified, well, we can't have buffaloes here. This is not a buffalo ground. So this is where we automatically considered the Mine family, who are on the Great Plains. They're, again, in Massachusetts, just outside of Edmonton. They have buffaloes. And so we identified that, well, we'll organize a big action to have Elizabeth somehow manage to acquire a female buffalo from this buffalo farm in Nottinghamshire, England, London, Britain. Is it Britain or England? England. Same place, all the same thing. To acquire one of these buffaloes, a female buffalo, and then we would have to also acquire or arrange for the transportation of that buffalo, whether it is flight or over sea, to bring that buffalo back here. And when that buffalo comes back here, then we bring it to the Mine family and return it back to the land from where it came from, where it originates from. And it just so happens that next summer, we are going again, part two of this walk across the country, to continue the process, to continue the message of returning our mothers back to power. Last time it was a message, we made the links all across the country, we made the connections. This time it's going to be to enact it, to get people actually physically taking action on this. And so when we make this walk across the country again next summer, that hopefully by this time, imagine if we have that buffalo with us from Nottinghamshire, which Elizabeth is going to work on to make this happen. Of course, this is a very huge, it's a very huge thought. It is not a thought of just the here and now, like for somebody to come up with some crazy idea of even just bringing a buffalo hide across across the great waters through, again, through the knowing how the borders are today, immigration and all of that. That was really quite something to accomplish that. But a much bigger thought than just that. A thought that is not just limited to our time, but a thought that completes a process that began over 150 years ago of corruption, and um, to affect solution to this or correction to it. When we had first had contact with Elizabeth when she stepped foot here in Turtle Island, that we had done a two-row wampum ceremony with her, and we had identified that if she would be who she could be, then she would be able to accomplish great things in this world, to accomplish through the two-row wampum the true relations once again. And as we identified, we had presented the two-row wampum to the wrong people. We presented it to men, the corrupt men in the non-native society who do not represent anything of their people. They only represent money, and the fact of the buffalo kill, the great buffalo kill, identifies this. That all those European men that came here to kill our buffaloes, they did not represent the people. They did not represent the women and children of their nations. And so we identified that we presented the two-row wampum to the wrong people. Now it must be presented to the true representation of Native society, which is the women, the mothers. And so this was what was presented to Elizabeth, and saying, if you would be who you could be, then great things can and will happen. And so this is the path we are walking on now. We are walking on this path where we have a dream in our mind, and that walking this path will make this dream come true. And it connects to what we had identified about how somehow it became part of my mission to actually somehow assist to bringing the buffaloes back. Somehow it connected my life to the Great Plains people and to identifying how the buffaloes would come back. And so now we are affecting that process. Even if it is just talked about right now, we're just talking about it. It's just a thought. It's a thought in Elizabeth's mind, it's a thought in our mind, and it is a thought expanding into many people's minds now. And people who will see this and who will hear it will see the truth and see the power in The correction of this process, that the corrupt process that started over 150 years ago, will see the truth in how to heal this thing that has been done. The non-native men from across the great waters all throughout Europe came here to destroy, came here under a corruption. Now the women, the true representations, will heal the corruptions and all the damage that their men had caused. And this will be a correction in their own bloodlines, in their societies. It will be a correction upon their territories, upon our Mother Earth. And then, with this correction, we will be able to once again walk in balance with each other. We will be in Gayandawana, from across the great waters to here, without ever having to actually physically go there and to talk with each other. Our communication link will be reestablished by returning the great buffaloes back to Turtle Island. So this is a great thing. In my life, I've had a lot of crazy things transpire, uh, things that you would never imagine. When I was a little kid, I was 12 years old, and again, the elders in the longhouse had broken the longhouse. So they showed me that everything that they said, they were liars. They had broken the longhouse, divided into two. And I was only 12 years old. And so at 12 years old, I was visited by my grandfather when he died to show me, to confirm to me that everything that I learned in the longhouse was true. It's just that my elders were corrupted. Now, at 12 years old, this is a very hard thing to come to terms with, a very hard thing to try to make sense of. And so it was my grandfather that showed me that it was all true. And basically, my grandfather put me on my path. Even though my elders removed the path for me, my grandfather put me on the path. And it was then through that he had showed me that what I had to do was I had to prove everything to be wrong. Everything that was in the longhouse, everything that I come to learn about Guyana Recital, he showed me that if there are liars, elders who were liars, that I had to find out what the truth was. And so he showed me that how to find out what the truth was is that I had to prove everything to be wrong. And that whatever could not be proven wrong, then that's what was left remaining. That was the truth. And so through this process over the years, uh, many things have been discovered to be wrong, and so these things have been removed from the longhouse. Many things have been discovered to have been lost, and so these things have been returned to the longhouse, such as you all know, the moon teachings. But in that process, when my grandfather showed me this, that what I had done to make it real in my mind again, to make my life real, is that I had carved this cane. I had carved this, which identifies it is the Ganyangahaga, the people of the Flint, and that we are of the Five Nations Longhouse Confederacy, and that we are the Ganyangahaga, always on the left of the belt, and that it is rooted in the Turtle Clan, the Wolf Clan, and the Bear Clan. This is representing what the knowledge of the Ganyangahaga is. It represents the identity. I had carved this when I was 12 years old, and it was missing for over 35 years. I had just found this back about, I think it was about 6 years ago now. It happened to be after my aunt had died. Uh, my Auntie Alvie took over my grandmother's house. So after she had died, I was in my grandmother's basement doing laundry, and sitting right there next to the furnace was this cane that I carved when I was 12 years old. It was missing for over 35 years. And when I found it, it was quite a surprise. I remember making it. I had cut myself right here in I don't know what you call that part in between your thumb and your index finger. I cut myself. There was a deep gash that I made, and my blood went into the cane. And I remember that because they say that when you get cut there, you can get, and that was a concern of my mother and father at the time, that I would get lockjaw. But anyways, my blood had gone into this. Anyways, I carved it to fit my hand. I carved it to fit my fingers. When I got this back, uh, 5 or 6 years ago, however long, we sent this cane on a journey to Mayan country, Mayan territory. It went with Lesbia. What was her? Lesbia's name? Well, it went with Valentina, but it went with Lesbia too. It went with Lesbia. What's Lesbia's last name? Lesbia Vela. It went with Lesbia Vela. She went into Mayan territory. She brought it back. We said, bring the message. And when she returned, she brought it back. And then it went with Valentina. As everybody knows, Valentina Alana, Arena. It went with Valentina Arena into to Brazil, Chile, and then yeah, there was these runners of the eagle and the condor. Anyways, it made this journey, and it had gone with her. As you know, she is a beautiful young woman, struggling to help the elders to bring back midwives. Beautiful, beautiful story. Anyway, she brought the information, and since then, Valentina was has been and still is a liaison for us to the peoples of the South. Anyway, she had brought this back to after her mission was complete, and then even just as some of you know, there was what has been happening, the story that's been unfolding with Venezuela. As some of you know, we have a very fortunate relationship, very close with the country of Venezuela. As some of you know, we have a very fortunate relationship, very close with the country of Venezuela. And so when the current representative, the highest level representative of the country, this was just around 4 or 5 months ago, I believe, to go in a jet across so-called Canada, and that when he came, we had welcomed him with this cane and identified that he can take this with him throughout the territories, and to identify that he is here within Turtle Island in the respectful way, in accordance with the dignity of Hade, and as basically like we're sponsoring him here in this land. Anyways, there was a whole story that happened with that. But now, what I'm going to say is, Elizabeth, I'm going to offer this to you. If you can come here and take this, we're going to ask if you also can represent this in your homeland. You take it with you, and when you are done, this must return also, because we have to take this with us when we go across the country next summer. So we ask you to take this, as you know what it represents. Again, it is the Ganyangahoga, the people of the Flint. And the Mohawks are always on the left of the belt. Oops, wrong side. It's hard to tell because the way that's broken. And as you know, we are rooted within the turtle, wolf, and bear. And as you know, like this is also representing, like in your world, what is coming to know, like through science, as the protons, neutrons, and electrons. So it identifies the core of our being, who we are. These ribbons were put on here by who? But the Mayan people down there, our true relationship, as we are all grown out of the same mother, that our true relationship is as family, and family does not war upon each other. Family does not kill each other. Years, and this corruption has spread in your homeland, that of years, and this corruption has spread to not only iterate, and this is our discussion back to you, that to carry this message, and so that when you speak to people about this great project, this great endeavor that we are embarking upon together, that this will be the truth, represent the truth of your words, and that this comes from where it comes from, you know the story to it. So we ask you to be faithful in your mission, to be true in your mission, and to represent only what the truth is of what is identified here in this mission. So this is a great thing. This is a huge, huge thing, that even if it is just in our minds right now, just thinking about it, people may think that, oh, that's a vision of grandeur, something that could never happen. The same way that people would think that what you did, but it did happen. You can see the resolve when we identified that we presented the Degani Diohade to the wrong people. Soon as we said that it must go to the true representation, and it was presented to the women, soon as this happened, immediate action, immediate results were seen. When for hundreds of years the two row wampum in the wrong hands, the wrong representatives, the males, nothing has happened except corruption. But the instance it was presented to the true representatives, the women, the mothers, then immediately things started to happen. So we look forward to this endeavor, and we know that we can make this happen by next summer. Not to put a heavy burden on you, but you got to hurry up and get this job done. We all have to hurry up and get this job done. To do so, imagine to return a buffalo from Nottinghamshire, England, here to Turtle Island, epic adventure. So, to just say, Nyawagoa, it is such a privilege, such an honor to be connected in the way that we are. We are finally talking. Not that it is you, but you as a part of the women on that side of the world. When they see what you are doing, you will empower those women. You will bring the women back out of the darkness, out of the dark ages, and bring them into the light of our eldest brother, the sun. And this is what will affect change. So we all have to assist. We all have to help to whatever degree we can. How can we make this happen? It is going to be quite an adventure. It is going to be quite something. It's going to pull not only us together into one mind, it is going to pull women from your side of the world, again, out of the darkness and pull them into a proper thinking mind. And together, our minds will reconnect again to what we've been identifying. Right now, about a Buffalo song, you may think of all a traditional native made by coincidence. Somebody whose bloodlines that come from Palestinian people. And it is her good work and her mind to return peace to wampum. Through the two wampum, she had developed the Buffalo song.